In the north of Portugal, there's a natural treasure that few people know of. It's called Serra da Aboboreira. A barren plateau contrasts with lush valley oak woods, attracting an amazing biodiversity. However, this land has been inhabited by humans for thousands of years. For it's here that one of the nation's greatest megalithic necropolises is found. As a consequence, this orographic elevation has earned the name of Serra dos Mortos, meaning mountain range of the dead. Mother Nature, though, seems to disagree with this human concept. Aboboreira, the living mountain range. We begin our journey during autumn, in a mist-filled wood. The dominant species here is the common oak, a tree that needs a very humid environment to survive. The large oaks create shelter for a smaller tree, holly. It grows very slowly and is threatened by the shrinking of its habitat and illegal harvesting. But here it thrives. Moss and lichen are revitalized by the rains. These primitive organisms have a much greater impact on the air quality than previously thought. This time of the year, most woodland activity is centered around one fruit, the acorn. Many species take advantage of this seasonal abundance in preparation for the winter. Even this nuthatch, a bird which usually prefers insects. A whole acorn is too big, but there is a way to break it into smaller pieces. It must find a suitable crack to lock the acorn in place in order to peck it. Not here though, maybe there. When it manages to break a piece, it hides it under some lichen, where it will stay for a day of need. Their neighbours are busy too, like this firecress, foraging for insects. While this grape tit seems to have found a caterpillar of generous dimensions. Winter hits the region hard. Near Aboboreira there's another mountain range called Marau, where snowfall is common during the colder months. In Aboboreira, however, snow is a rare sight, but it still marks its presence a handful of days a year. Birds that started breeding early have to do their best to protect their offspring from the elements, as is the case of this song thrush. Their perseverance is rewarded. For when rain abounds, earthworms are plentiful. As spring moves forward, colour blooms through the landscape. The plateau is dominated by shrubs like broom, with its fragrant yellow flowers, and heather. We're in the beginning of April, and in the first hours of the day, many animals come out to enjoy the warmth of the sun. The soundscape during this time of the year is marked by the singing of male birds trying to attract mates. The most common is the Eurasian skylark, followed closely by the rock bunting. This abundance of small birds, coupled with the low-growing vegetation, make the highlands of Aboboreira the perfect breeding ground for a predator coming all the way from sub-Saharan Africa. Montagu's harrier. It's a medium-sized raptor known for its elegant, agile flight. This one is a male with its characteristic grey colour. Females, on the other hand, are mostly brown. In the north of Portugal, a melanistic form is common, where both male and female can be much darker than usual. Here we have a male, enjoying a well-deserved break. Life for him is not easy this time of the year. He has to provide food for his mate, which is in charge of incubating the eggs in the nest. Which is a peculiar one, as harriers are among the few birds of prey that make their nests on the ground. A few more stretches, and it's time to go. One of the disadvantages of nesting on the ground is the lack of airflow. On the hotter days, the female must protect her eggs from overheating, so she stands up at regular intervals to cool them off. The male came back, bringing food. He announces his arrival with a quick fly over the nest. She must take flight to receive her meal mid-air. The landscape of Serra da Aboboreira has been shaped by men throughout the millennia. The highlands are what can be called an anthropogenic heath, an area that was once a forest but has been cleared by humans for grazing and agricultural purposes. Lower down in the valleys, that primordial woodland can still be found. The richest of such habitats is the oak forest of Veal, one of the largest concentrations of pedunculate oak of the Iberian Peninsula. This native, diverse forest is home to many animals, such as, to name just a few, the long-tailed tit, the robin, the Eurasian wren, the jay, the wood pigeon, the lesser spotted woodpecker, and, if we look closely at the treetops, the brightly coloured golden oriole. The river of Veal is the largest waterway sourced in Aboboreira. Life flourishes on its margins. Nearby, a great tit. He's busy working on his nest. It must be lined with moss before the female can lay her eggs. The The blue tit also breeds in tree holes. But this home is still undergoing renovation. There is a river dweller that is particularly shy, the dipper. It's the only passerine in the world that dives in order to hunt aquatic invertebrates. Aboboreira is home to a remarkable variety of butterflies. The blossoming of the branched asphodel attracts several different species of these insects. The most abundant is the southern swallowtail, one of the largest butterflies in Europe, with up to 8 centimeters of wingspan. A rarer sight is the lesser spotted fritillary. The unmistakable Nymphalis antiopa is well known for having one of the longest lifespans of all butterflies, of up to 12 months. Back at our harrier's nest, the female is found flying over her territory. The chicks have hatched, all 4 of them. At this stage, they need their mother's care at all times. The male returns with food. Today's special is slowworm. The 2 smaller, weaker chicks will have to fight hard if they want to survive. The odds are against them. On average, only 2 nestlings are raised successfully. Near the Veal River, on a forest edge, a suspicious call is heard. Atop a pine tree, there is a big nest, but it's empty. It's a buzzard's nest. The 3 fledglings are out exploring, but they still depend on their parents for nourishment. Throughout their day, the young buzzards entertain themselves practicing skills that will prove useful once they grow up. This youngster is trying perch hunting. All it has to do is just stand there, waiting for rodents to pass below. It hasn't quite nailed the standing part yet. Suddenly, a parent arrives with something to eat, a snake. The juveniles quickly fly over to the nest where the food was left. Wasting no time, the parent leaves again, looking for their next meal. Night falls in Aboboreira, and under the starry sky and the moonlight, the more than 30 tumuli that exist here acquire a new dimension. The oldest were built 6,500 years ago, while the newer ones some 4,000 years ago. Featured prominently on the landscape, the Dolmens. The biggest is known as Dolmen de Shada Parada 1. Inside it, there's a mysterious engraving, its meaning unknown. It's called The Thing. This spiritual link with the natural world was kept alive throughout the centuries, as can be seen in the bovine heads on the medieval portico of Taboado's church. The church of Soalhainch, deeply reconfigured in the 18th century, displays an exuberant interior in gold carving and azulejo. In Valadares Church, behind the Baroque altarpiece, there's an even bigger treasure, a 15th century mural. Perhaps its most striking feature are the mythological beasts and demons that inhabit this chilling depiction of hell. It's the beginning of July, and our male harrier is hunting. However, the deep vegetation is complicating his job. Back on the nest, the female waits patiently, accompanied by not 4, but only 3 chicks. One of them didn't make it. But at least these 3 seem well fed and healthy. The male gives it another try, but fails once again. Not far from here, another male seems to be doing better. Here, the vegetation is dominated by grass, which makes it easier to reach the ground. He seems to have caught something small, probably an insect. For now, that will do. Our male has finally been successful, bringing directly to the nest an Iberian emerald lizard. This chick seems to have bitten off more than it can chew. Or maybe not. Nearby, a buzzard is patrolling the skies. It takes advantage of the strong winds to hover over one area looking for prey. These stone chats must be careful. If the buzzard finds nothing, it moves sideways a few meters, scanning a new patch of terrain. It saw something. It's not the best time to be distracted. It caught an insect. For now, it will be sufficient. For the stone chats, the danger is over. In late July, a visit to our harrier's nest reveals something different. This is not the mother. It's one of the juveniles. It's trying out its wings, getting ready for its first flight. Just a week later, and all three of them are flying. Rather acrobatically even. The mother joins them. This was a successful year for these Montagu's harriers. But the hardest part is yet to come, the long migration to sub-Saharan Africa. Autumn soon arrives and snow has started falling on the highlands of Morau. The rhythm of nature starts to slow down. Thus we complete our journey through this mountain range that hides fascinating nature in plain sight. This heritage is now finally being recognised, for this area will soon be protected as a natural reserve. A triumph for this mountain range that breathes life. Serra da Aboboreira.